treat to be here with you. It's a treat to be anywhere, to be quite honest. I'm glad that you all can be with me as well. Um, and how's that go? Without further ado, uh, Sarah, did you find Dr. Graham's health series? Wow, the health series. I know I saw it there just recently. Hmm. All right, we'll pursue that a little further. What is 10 nutrition 101? Well, 101 is just the concept of basic, right? I mean, in college level courses, you start with a 101 because that's the basics, and then they go to 201 for the second year and 301, things like that. Uh, but even within the 101 framework, I wanted to present everything that I was going to do on nutrition for this course material as 101 material. I think it is just the basics, the common questions people ask, and the common material that people need to know in order to get going with their introduction to raw, restart on raw, recommitment to raw, whatever it might be, so that they can get over those stepping stones and get over the hurdles. Because pretty much anybody who eats thinks they're an expert on food, and anybody who's an expert on food pretty much says they're an expert on nutrition. Everybody knows when you ask them, they say, "I really watch what I eat." I've almost never in my life talked to somebody who said I eat really badly. Most people say they eat well. I know there's some who say otherwise, but most people say they eat well. They like to think that. So I'm going through the 101, but there were 6 parts. So it was either 101, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or as you would do in an outline, 101, A, B, C, D, E, and next week, F. Well, 2 weeks from now, F. So we'll go through section E. We've covered quite a bit of ground on the basics of nutrition. And after we finish A through F, we'll start looking at food. We'll start looking at culinary skills. We'll look at the other things that make um, eating raw successful or challenging, or however we want to see that. And let's make it successful for everybody. I don't see a reason not to succeed. Uh, and people will tell me, they say, well, Dr. Graham, it took you 17 years to figure out how to succeed. Well, we can't do it in 17 weeks or whatever. And I think you can do it in 17 minutes these days, maybe less, uh, because my route to raw food was long and circuitous. Most people, even to this day, still follow an unnecessarily long and circuitous route to raw. And I think we can shortcut all that if you wish to go raw. Now, for the people who aren't ready to go, well, then take a longer route. That's fine. But for the people who go, okay, I can conceptualize it, therefore I can see it, therefore I can believe it, um, or they come at it the other way around and they go, I can believe it, therefore I can see it. And I don't really care which way you want to go through that process. For me, once I realized that raw was the way to go, I just had to figure out a way to make it work. And a lot of people had a lot of things to say about that. A lot of people had information that didn't really help me on the route, and I got sidetracked over and over and over. And I'm going to present enough material over these. It's actually a 13 section presentation. Wow, that's almost magical, right? That my glass disappears. Sorry to be distracted by that, but I am holding a glass. So I want you to succeed. I want to make it really easy for you to succeed. I understand full well that not everybody always believes everything I say, and that's just fine. If you need to prove it for yourself or to yourself, that's just fine. If you need to prove it to yourself over and over and over again, that's just fine. Many people have to do that. Um, certainly, certainly, I cut my hands picking up broken glass many times, uh, and I burnt my roof of mouth on hot pizza many times. And I went raw, absolutely 100%, no looking back, completely all raw all the time. Count on it, at least 17 times that I can remember, and maybe more. I admit to being a slow learner, but once I learn a shortcut to a friend's house, if I want to go to my friend's house, I take the shortcut and I'm right there as quickly as possible. I mean, I'm not looking to make the route harder than it needs to be for anybody. I'm looking to make it easier. And without further ado, let's get right into the heart of the matter today. I have three concepts I want to cover. And as I've done almost every week, I really want the presentation to be more conceptual than it is, here's the facts. All right, because the facts talk a little bit, but you can interpret them any way you like. The concepts, not so much. Once you get a concept, you got to work with it. And the concept, my first concept, as you've already seen in the outline, is fiber is your friend. People who try to avoid fiber are working against themselves for a variety of reasons. One of those reasons is that fiber regulates nutrient uptake. So that's kind of a cool thing, that it regulates nutrient uptake. In other words, food passes through you at a specific speed based on what's in that food. Water goes through you incredibly rapidly. I mean, if you drink a couple glasses of water, it can be minutes before you go, wow, I've got a I've got too much water in my system. My body's taking care of it, and now I've got to go urinate because, it went all the way through my digestive system, passed into my bloodstream, got processed by my kidneys, and it's been less than an hour. I mean, that's moving really fast. Other people will eat food, maybe not in our group, but there's plenty of people who will eat food that was so heavy, so rich, so devoid of fiber that it went through crazy slowly. And when they get an upset stomach 24 hours later and eventually vomit, whatever it is, the offending matter, uh, realize that, wow, that food hadn't even gotten past their upper intestine at the farthest, and maybe not even past their stomach. And it was already 24 hours later. So the passage of food and the uptake of nutrients is regulated and modulated by fiber itself. Now, we can't just say that it speeds up the passage or slows down the passage, because that's not quite the deal. For instance, water goes through incredibly quickly and there's no fiber, but meat goes through incredibly slowly, cheese goes through incredibly slowly, and there's no fiber. So it's not just that. We're truly talking about regulating, correcting, making it appropriate in the same way for the passage of the food as for the nutrient uptake of the food. These are two different concepts, but liquids especially go through really quickly. Part of why we've tended to recommend that when people structure a meal, that they go with the most water-rich portion of the meal first, and that the meal becomes increasingly dense. So you might have soup or fruit at the start of a meal, blended fruit, and then go to something more dense like your salad, or go to something more dense than that, like avocado or nuts or whatever it is you're having towards the end of the meal, where you want to eat something a little more rich. But I wouldn't recommend starting with the most rich, dense nuts and seeds and then going to strawberries or something. It's kind of backwards as far as the way your body's going to process it. But water goes through really quickly, and so do juices. A lot of people are really, you know, promoting juices for any number of reasons. And I'm not coming out against juices. What I'm coming out in instead is I'm coming out in favor of whole foods, as I have several times already during the course of this program. But certainly, fiber in food is like a feather in the cap of the whole food concept. The fact that there's fiber in the whole plant foods that we eat is another checkpoint where you go, wow, that's a good thing. Really glad to have that fiber because it regulates nutrient uptake. Meaning, for instance, that if we were to take some vegetables and make a juice out of them and then drink it like it was water, basically, that it's going to pass through your system at the speed of water. And at the speed of water, nutrient uptake is compromised because we're not talking about a sponge. We're talking about nutrient uptake sites. The nutrient uptake sites need access to your food as it passes through the small intestine in order to uptake specific nutrients, and various nutrients are uptaken at various uptake sites. Various nutrients are processed by different colonies of microbes within your small intestine. And if the food is going through at the speed of water, there's not sufficient time to process the nutrients, to ready them for uptake, to have them be at the uptake site long enough to be absorbed into the bloodstream or into the lymphatic system, whichever place they're going next, different nutrients going in different places. The old story, which is still a true story, but the old story of why fiber was so important was because it works like an intestinal brush. It cleans the intestines. It helps keep things moving through the intestines. And although it's not really so much of a brush like scrub brushes, uh, the fact that there's fiber in our food does, to a degree, keep things working like a cleanser of the internal portions of the intestinal tract, because the fiber holds on to things, it absorbs, it specifically holds liquid, it holds moisture. Now, at the risk of being on the verge of offensive, and I'm not intending to be offensive in any way, but everybody poops, and poop can be either as hard and rough as a dried out brick, or it can be as smooth and silky and soft and easy to pass as you could ever hope for in a good dream. So we like that smooth and soft and easy to pass. And the way that happens is when there's sufficient fiber in our food, because the fiber holds moisture in the stool itself. So for a lot of reasons, we can see that fiber is definitely your friend. We want to have fiber in our food. The absence of fiber from food is a valid argument for reconsidering the value of that food. Truly a valid argument for reconsidering the value of that food. What's the point of fiberless food? When people ask you, where do you get your fiber? While you're drinking a breakfast juice, your morning juice. I start every morning with juice, some people say, and I'm going, well, yeah, but why? Where do you get your fiber? The fiber is important for nutrient uptake and for passage of food and for intestinal cleansing and for proper bowel functions. And where do you get your fiber if you just removed all the fiber from the food? In fact, fiber is so important that if we look at modern sales of what are considered to be healthy breakfast cereals, they all include added fiber. When my mom was into her health food days, she kept a little pot of bran on the kitchen table that every morning when she would have her breakfast, she would be adding bran. So we have to now wonder if we're being sold a bill of goods. And if you're being sold a bill of goods, you got to ask yourself, how long do you want to buy into that contradiction? Because in science, contradictions can't really exist. And in the world of health science, contradictions can't really exist. Something's got to give every single time. And the contradiction in this case is that juices are really good for you. If we remove all the fiber from our food, it's really good for us. We make a health food that's sold in health food stores all around the world. They're selling us juices like it's health food. But then they're also selling us fiber and telling us to add fiber, and that fiber is good for us. And we're going to add extra fiber into our breakfast cereals because the fiber is good for us. And they're not even using the fiber that they took out of the vegetables, as if that would almost make sense to, like, okay, for presentation purposes, I can understand full well making vegetable juice, but then keep all that fiber and make some burgers or something, make a salad dressing, make something out of all that fiber so that we get to consume the fiber at some point, because otherwise we're buying into a contradiction. And most people buy into both ends of the contradiction, and they believe that juices are good for them and fiber is good for them. So they remove the fiber from their juice and add it to their breakfast cereal, and to them that makes sense. To me, that doesn't make sense. I don't get it. And I'm going to go with fiber is my friend. I'm looking for fiber in my food because when we remove the fiber from food, although the nutritional value of fiber can be argued, some people would say, well, we don't digest fiber, therefore it's not a nutrient. But nutrition books haven't come to that viewpoint. And nutrition books are our standard for communication. And the nutrition books will tell us that fiber is a nutrient. It's certainly listed as one of the critical nutrients. In the same way, as we talked about earlier in this class, there's people who will tell you that water is not a nutrient, contains no calories, it's got no fiber, it's got no protein, fat, or carbohydrate, no vitamins or minerals. It's not a nutrient in and of its own. It's just something to dilute other things. Well, I don't really care how you want to split hairs. The nutrition books tell us that water is a nutrient, and they sure tell us that fiber is a nutrient, that there's different kinds of fiber. There's the soluble and the insoluble, that the insoluble is really tough and coarse. It's like the Bark on trees is made from insoluble fiber, whereas the soluble fibers, you don't notice them because they're diluted in the liquid of the fruit itself. But if you blend some blueberries, it turns into a gel very quickly because of the fiber. The fiber in this case is known as guar, known as pectin, and those two fibers are soluble fibers, and they hold things together. And that's got a lot of potential culinary uses. We want to take advantage of that for all sorts of presentations. But if we're going to think of fiber as a feather in the cap of whole food, or the feather in the cap of the whole food concept, then when we look at empty calories, we can see that removing the fiber from the food, at least to some degree, partially empties the calories of their nutrients. So empty calories are calories with all of their nutrients removed, but partially empty calories could certainly exist. If we have empty calories at one end, we have whole foods or full calories at the other end of the spectrum. And all the way through that entire continuum, we could have partially empty, or if you prefer, if you're a glass half full kind of guy, partially full calories. Partially whole food. Well, I prefer whole food to partially whole food. We are having hot summer day here. Our first really hot, it came last night. Every night when I walk the dogs, even at this time of year, I'm in long pants and put on at least a jacket or a jacket and a hat. Last night I was shorts and shoes and not even a shirt and walking the dogs. And I go, oh, this is completely different. It's really warmed up. So today it's warmed up, and I'm sorry if I'm drinking a lot, but it's necessary. So, empty calories. What the heck are empty calories? Well, they're calories without their nutrients. And calories that have had all their nutrients removed have taken a really bad rap, as the expression goes, because they have a lot of adverse effects on our health. Well, I mean, that's fair enough. It's true. But if you ask someone, what are empty calories? Can you give me examples? Most people say, sure, I can give you examples of empty calories. Refined white flour is an empty calories. It's had everything removed, or just about everything removed from the original whole grain, and now it's just refined flour. And it's a source of carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates at that, but it's a source of carbohydrates, but it doesn't have all the other associated nutrients that we tend to think go with or should go with those carbohydrates. And if you ask for further, we also know that the other carbohydrates, the refined sugars, that those are also empty calories. And again, we're taking in calories without taking in nutrients. We end up with a host of problems. The classic example being to look at what happens to some children after you give them some empty calories, and all of a sudden they're going 60 miles an hour and there's nobody at the wheel, running around just out of control. So I would have to say that when I think of empty calories, I don't tend to think of sugar or refined flour as my empty calorie problem area. And here's why. Your body is fueled almost exclusively by glucose. Every cell of the body is fueled by glucose. I was listening to a presentation yesterday where the woman was um, explaining how to beat cancer by starving the cancer cells of glucose because they really like glucose. They're good at uptaking glucose. They're better at uptaking glucose than most other cells. And she said the secret to beating cancer is to starve the cancer cells of glucose. And the way you do that, in her opinion, is to go on a zero carb diet. Now, obviously, she doesn't understand enough physiology to realize that even if you're on a zero carb diet, your body converts what you eat into carbs so that you can have an acceptable level of blood glucose running through your entire system so that your brain can continue to get glucose and your heart and lung and liver and spleen and all the other organs and your muscles can continue to get glucose because that's the fuel of choice for every cell in the body. And that there's no way to create a body with no blood glucose in order to starve cancer cells of glucose. So the entire premise was wrong from the start. It's part of the lie of nutrient marketing. Here we are focusing on white flour and white sugar as if they're the problem when we know for fact that our physiology calls for 85, roughly 80 to 90% of our calories coming from preferably simple sugars, glucose and fructose. That we do well when our diet is almost, not exclusively, but say 80 to 90% of calories coming from glucose and some fructose. So at that point, pointing a finger at sugar and saying how bad sugar is doesn't really make a ton of sense. Yes, I understand full well that refined white flour is neither glucose nor fructose, that it's sucrose and sometimes dextrose. But getting that uptight about sugar when sugar isn't the problem represents sort of an issue to me, and even starches, because we can look at a lot of cultures that rely on cooked starches as their mainstay. We know there's people in the vegan movement promoting starches as a mainstay. And no, I don't think for 1 second that starches, in terms of the complex carbohydrates from grains and tubers and roots and whatnot, come even close to the nutritional value or the health value of the fructose and glucose that we're getting from our fruits. But if I had to pick a second place, that would probably be it. Um, but don't make me pick second place because I'm not here to present to you what's second best. I'm here to present to you what's best. You can choose after that where you want to go. I want to go towards best. I think I deserve the best. I think my family deserves the best. My friends deserve the best. My clients deserve the best. I'm sure you deserve the best. I'm just not sure that you're sure that you deserve the best. And when you become sure that you deserve the best, you'll go to fruit as your main calorie source. So, what is the lie of nutrient marketing? The lie of nutrient marketing is twofold. One, they're selling you nutrients and foods based on specific nutrients in the foods. Now, we talked about this a couple of sessions ago where I talked about nutrition from the point of individual nutrients and how this simply can't be done. We can't run our nutrition. We can't run our nutrition from the standpoint of nutrients. If we want our nutrition to work, it has to be from the standpoint of food, not from the standpoint of nutrients. There's no creature that worries about the nutrients in their food. They worry about their food. So, and usually the worry is, can we access food? Can we get enough food? If they can't, they're on the move looking for food. It's a driving force. The other part of the lie, it's an outright lie. I can't even call it a myth. It's an outright lie of nutrient marketing, rather than saying, oh, well, oatmeal's really good for you because it's got fiber in it, is that oil and protein are nutrients in and of their own right that we should be concerning ourselves about, to the degree of ignoring the fact that an oil is actually an empty calorie. Here we have a fat with fiber removed, water removed, vitamins, minerals, enzymes, coenzymes, antioxidants, phytonutrients, protein, carbohydrate, everything's removed except the oil. This is the very definition of empty calories. And a little bit goes a very long way when it comes to oil in terms of how many calories, which is something I always find funny when people are, pouring oil on a salad and asking me, where do I get my protein? And I'm going, well, you're not getting it from the salad and you're not getting it from the oil. Where do you get your protein? And I know people still have a hard time with the idea that there's really good oils and then there's just the oils that you buy on the grocery store shelf, but there's really good oils. And that there's people who put their name on their oils in order to market it as extra special, super fine, extra virgin, extra virgin, whatever oil. And there's other people telling us, don't we need to have oils? And we're like, yeah, you need it. No, your body's going to make whatever oils you need. You're going to get them in your food. There's a reason butter lettuce is called butter lettuce. It feels oily because it is oily. All our vegetables have a little oil in them. There's a reason you can make oil from nuts and seeds because there are oils in there. And certainly even watermelon or apples have a little tiny, I mean, not much, but a little tiny amount of oils, even in our fruit. So this is how it's got to be. Yes, your body needs to have those really good oils. But adding more omega-3 when you already have too much omega-6 is not the solution. Blinding yourself to the fact that oils are the very definition of empty calories, this is the problem. And there's a lot of vegan and other health-minded vegetarian doctors and nutritionists who have come out with a very strong standpoint of avoiding oils always. There's that SOS thing, and there's no oil added, and oils are getting the bad reputation that they deserve. But no one is saying because oil is empty calories. And that's the very reason. Yes, all sorts of undesirable health effects will happen as a result of consuming them. But it happens because they're empty calories, because they're not tied in with the foods, all the other nutrients that we would find in a food. I'm not saying don't eat a pistachio because it's got some oil in it. We're saying don't eat the refined oil because it doesn't have the rest of the pistachio in it. And the same thing can be said for proteins and protein powders And there's plenty of people selling protein powder like it's health food in the raw food movement. Oh, yes, I can get this raw protein powder from hemp or from peas or from wherever it comes. I don't really care where it comes from. It's still protein powder, making it still empty calories. Again, the very definition of empty calories, it's protein, which is a calorie source. It's got all the vitamins, minerals, enzymes, coenzymes, antioxidants, phytonutrients, water, and fiber removed. And the only thing left is the protein. Well, your body responds to the consumption of straight protein like there's an emergency going on in the body, because there is protein levels in the blood spike that high that quickly. An emergency action has to be undertaken by the body. It's a huge stimulant. You might as well drink a cup of coffee. And in terms of nutritional value, you can't make up for the consumption of empty calories. Here's what happens. You consume empty calories. Your body's trying to create a balance of nutrients. We've learned about this balance. We know that calcium comes with magnesium and all sorts of other nutrients are designed to be balanced with other nutrients. We have to see them in relationships, in ratios. The B complex has to balance itself out with all the B vitamins that selenium, zinc, and all sorts of, and vitamin E, and lots of vitamins interact with other vitamins in order to work properly. And the same thing is true for carbohydrates to other nutrients, proteins to other nutrients, fats to other nutrients. When we consume empty calories, your body has to do a quick triage, do some emergency work, pull up a bunch of available nutrients from blood supplies or into blood supplies so that it can balance out what's in the blood, what's gotten in, with what's supposed to be. And so when I say that actually empty calories not only bankrupt you because you get the calories without all the nutrients that you require, they also bankrupt you because when you take in those calories, in order to properly process those calories, we have to use nutrients from our bodily supplies. And so it robs your supplies in order to put the empty calories into balance with what is required within the body. So it gets you twice. Empty calories truly bankrupt you in two different ways. Now, there's another concept called empty nutrients, and I'm going to look at that next week. I'll talk to you about that next week, and we'll look at what are empty nutrients, because that's a concept, again, that as far as I know, I haven't heard anybody talk about. But we want you on the cutting edge. I want you to understand what's going on. And instead of, let's go forward and go, how worried are you about your nutrition? How worried are you? When we're looking at models in nature as our guide, and in nature, when we know that all the animals that are built like us eat fruits and vegetables, when we're eating fruits and vegetables like them, how worried are you about your nutrition? Well, I think models in nature is a good way to go. So let's look at some chimpanzees. Maybe we can give them a quiz and ask them, how many chimps out of 100 are worried about their nutrition? Probably 0. How many deer are worried about their nutrition? How many squirrels are worried about their nutrition? How many hawks? How many bonobo? How many elephants? We don't see a model in nature of animals worrying about nutrition. They worry about getting enough food, and they want to eat the food that is appropriate to their species. I think it's a funnier question, which would be, let's go back 20 years or 30 years if you've got that in you, or 40 years if you've got that in you. Let's go back. Let's go back 30, 40 years if you can, or 20 if you can, or 10 if that's as far back as you can remember, meaning you're either very young or very old. And and let's go back in time a little bit and go, how much did you used to worry about nutrition when you were eating at McDonald's, when you were eating cheeseburgers and fries and pizza and Coke and steak on the grill? How much did you worry about nutrition back then? Probably not at all. And now you've improved your diet dramatically, you've improved your lifestyle dramatically, you're getting yourself lined up to live in accordance with the laws of nature, and now you're worrying? Like, let go of all that worry, folks. The worry, I mean, we've seen it in the last year and a half with this whole political scenario of trying to stir up fear in people and say, oh, look, if you're worried about things, then we can control you. Well, it's the same with your nutrition. You know, you've got next door neighbors who are still eating relatively standard Western diets, and they're not worrying about their nutrition, and you're worrying about your, let go of it. If you're worried about your nutrition, I'd say just let go of it. In fact, I'm going to say that, and I'm not going to get in deep into biochemistry and cortisol and on through the stuff, okay? But I'm going to say and put it out there for anybody, feel free to disprove it if you wish, that worry in general and worrying about your nutrition specifically does more harm by the sheer biochemistry of worry than any improvements in diet that you might make as a result of that worry. I don't see it happening. I see that you're going to blow through your vitamin C, you're going to blow through your B vitamins, you're going to create storms of hormones that can take 20 to 30 minutes just to recover from, setting off all sorts of problems, and actually do yourself more harm by worrying than any correction of nutrition that you could make as a result of that worrying. So I think the worry does more damage than you can possibly help yourself. So if you're worried about your nutrition, it's time to stop. And it's time to eat more fruits and vegetables as your mainstay. Let fruits and vegetables be your mainstay. And we don't have to worry about any of this stuff. Okay, that's me off my high horse. I'm going to encourage you all to up your health. And I wasn't looking at the chat. I guess I should have been, but I'll take a peek now. Let's see.
Dr. Graham, that was so informational.
Oh, bless.
Every time I listen, I'm like, it just makes such more sense. And whole fruits and vegetables, with understanding how it passes through your body, and stop worrying. I mean, those are two things can completely change your attitude in your life. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Totally my pleasure. Oh, there's lots of things on this chat.
Well, while Dr. Graham is getting ready, I can tell you
Okay.
that next week we actually will have questions and answers. So prepare your questions. You can email them in advance. We can do that. You can ask them. You can post them in chat next week.
Sure, I've already started my collection.
Yep, it's the free class that Dr. Graham is graciously doing for us.
Listen, if you guys have been having fun going through this nutritional program with me, if you've been having a good time on Let's Cook Raw, this is a great class to bring a friend to that can be their introduction. Let them come on to ask their questions. It's going to be very much a living room situation. It's something Zoom is really good at because everybody's really one-on-one with me. Um, I'm one-on with however many are here, but you all are one-on-one with me. So we can do it that way. And, it's a good introduction. Question from Emily. Do different types of fiber matter? Well, sure, different types of fiber matter. Yes, Emily, what we really need a lot of is soluble fiber. That's the good stuff. We cannot digest fiber per se, but we utilize the soluble fiber for all the reasons that I mentioned today in terms of keeping moisture in the bolus of food as it passes through us, keeping the stool soft enough to make it easy to pass, to help us with all the various modulation of nutrient uptake. Sure, we need that soluble fiber. Do we need insoluble fiber? Well, it turns out that this is also an indigestible fiber. And if you'd like examples of insoluble fiber that we still consume, because not that many people eat that much bark off of trees, perhaps with the exception of cinnamon. But even then, you usually grind it into powder before you eat it. But the skins on fruit are made of insoluble fiber. So when you eat tomato skins, you may have had the experience of seeing the tomato skins in the toilet bowl, or apple skins in the toilet bowl, or the skins of pretty much any fruits and vegetables are insoluble fiber. And people will tell me sometimes that they see vegetable matter. They're not digesting their food properly because they see vegetable matter at the other end. I'm going, you're not seeing vegetable matter. What you're seeing is the skins of food, because the skins are insoluble fiber and you can't digest them anyway. So it's really, if it's big chunks, it's telling you didn't chew very well. But other than that, you just can't, it wouldn't matter how much you chew it, you still can't digest it. Are we looking for tougher fibers than that? No, we like our vegetables to be, we like our tender vegetables. If anybody's ever tried to grow celery and it came out woody, and then it's basically inedible. It's just too tough. So while I'm looking for and recommending that we consume lots of soluble fibers, we really don't have a great need for insoluble fibers. Now, insoluble fibers is what's sold to us when we when you go to the health food store and you want to buy some bran or some other insoluble fiber to help you with your constipation because you haven't been eating a lot of soluble fiber foods and you haven't been moving a lot, and so therefore your bowels aren't either. But insoluble fiber, basically in that form, the psyllium husks and other tough fibers like this, bran and whatnot, essentially the way they work, and the reason they work is because they work like, well, they're insoluble. You can't add water to them. And so they stay sharp and coarse. It's basically an irritant. It's a bit like eating ground glass or eating sand. It just irritates the heck out of your system. And so your system says, hey, we got to get rid of this stuff along with whatever else is in there at the time. And yeah, it does the job, but at the expense of some serious irritation. More is coming up. Well, Sylvie, should we peel our fruits? Well, it's. I think this is, what do they call that? Hobbes' choice? Hobson's choice? How does that expression go, Brian? Do you know? I think it's Hobson's choice. Anybody know?
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
You get it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Some people will say, okay, so for most presentation techniques, I'm going to peel my cucumbers. I don't always peel cucumbers. Like if I'm taking a cucumber with me on a train and I just want to eat it, 3 hours into the trip, I'm probably not going to peel it first. I'm just going to bring a cucumber and eat it. Or on an airplane, I brought some cucumbers on airplane the other day. You have to be careful when you take cucumbers on the airplane, folks, because they will stop you going through security because they do look kind of like pipe bombs. But you just keep your cool. But I won't usually peel it because I want it to last longer. I'm certainly not peeling any of my fruits that have super tender skins. So I'm not peeling raspberries. I know it seems silly, right? But presentation. If I want to make oatmeal out of dates, bananas, and apples, I'll usually peel the apples because I don't want the red showing up in my oatmeal. I want white showing up in my oatmeal. If I'm making cucumber noodles or zucchini noodles, I'm going to peel them because they taste better, they look better, they eat better. They're less coarse, they're less hard to chew when I do it that way. So Robbie, I just tell them that it's cucumbers, and then they look anyway because they don't believe me, and then they check, and then they run it through a second time because that's what they got to do. So I get double zapped cucumbers. What vegetables would I advise not consuming? I'd advise not consuming vegetables that are too tough for you to digest easily, or ones that don't sit well with you, or ones that result in uncomfortable amounts of gas or smelly end results. So peeling is an option. You gotta go with the presentation style you want, and go with the mouth feel that you want. But it's nature's package. Certainly, if you watch animals in nature, there are plenty of animals that will spit out the peel after they chew the fruit. If you watch chimpanzees eating even an orange, they'll peel the orange and then chew the orange, and some of them will swallow and some of them will spit the pulp out and just swallow the juice. So, it's your choice. Some of us are more delicate about the way we eat than others. Some of us are more bull in China shop.